It is finally time to figure out how much power the twin turbo Vette makes. Well, it worked last time. 2 months ago, I won this Corvette at auction after it had an engine bay fire. Since then, we've slapped a couple turbos on it, among a few other upgrades, all with one goal in mind: to make 1,500 horsepower while leaving the engine the exact same way it came from the salvage auction. Also, said engine turned out to be a Steve Morse built 427, so that kind of helps. Now, the first thing we gotta do before we can take old girl for a spin and strap her down to the dyno is get these boosts controlled. And while I realize the phrase uncontrolled boost might sound like a great time, it's actually the complete opposite. Currently, our boost is being controlled by a pair of wastegates coming off our turbo manifolds, and while they look fancy, they're actually very simple mechanisms. There's just a spring inside, and say that spring is a 5-pound spring, well, you're gonna have roughly 5 pounds of boost. So when I say we need to get these boosts under control, what I really mean is make sure we have all the boost we could ever want. Now, most builds, you could accomplish this with a few vacuum lines and a cheap solenoid like this to tell your wastegate when it can open and release all your extra boosts. But the problem with using pressurized air to control boost, especially on a build like this where one misguided pound of boost could be the difference in between making 1,500 horsepower and turning your engine to dust, is it's slow to react. So on this build, we're gonna use 2 of those same cheap solenoids and a giant bottle of CO2. By switching to a CO2 boost control setup, we're going to be jamming so much pressure into the top of this wastegate that it will not open unless we command it to with one of these solenoids. Without the CO2 setup to keep our wastegates from opening, we'd be cramming as many of these springs as we possibly could inside the wastegate, but no matter what, eventually they're going to be overpowered, our wastegate's going to open, and then all our potential boost is going to come right out the exhaust. So the way we've got this all set up, from our 2 solenoids, we have a line that goes down our engine bay that we've placed an inline pressure sensor in. That way we know exactly how much CO2 pressure we have. From there, it splits and simply goes into the top of both wastegates. The solenoid closer to the engine is going to be the one tasked with regulating and maintaining CO2 line pressure, therefore keeping our wastegates closed. And this one over here is going to be the one that we command to open up when we want to drop boost. It'll vent CO2 to the atmosphere, drop our line pressure, and allow our wastegates to open. But all that stuff, it's not going to do us a whole lot of good without a bottle of CO2 to go along with it. Luckily though, we've got kind of the perfect place to mount it. Ever since we ripped out all that HVAC stuff behind the dash, I've been itching to put this space to good use, and what better than this? Yep, she ain't going nowhere. Now, we can just run a dash 4 line from our bottle up to our solenoid assembly, and we are officially ready to test this thing out.
So I'm about to command the wastegate pressure up solenoid on with the computer, which is going to send pressure from the CO2 canister to the wastegate.
Which we should be able to hear.
Now I'm going to turn that solenoid off, and I'm going to command the open solenoid on, which is going to vent everything.
Definitely heard that one. Well, it seems we've got a working CO2 system.
And no leaks.
With that sorted, there's really just a few minor things stopping us from driving it out the door for the first time. Numero uno, brake lines, or more specifically, the lack thereof brake lines. Now, from the factory, off this brake master cylinder, you have a couple hard lines that run up and, well, basically through our turbo manifold to the front of the car into our ABS unit, which should go right about there, down about a foot. This kit by Finishing Lines, not only is it going to allow us to delete our ABS pump, but we're also going to be able to get rid of every single brake hard line in the car. Originally, I just set out to find a pre-made brake line kit that would allow us to get rid of this, but considering this car has been dogged by everybody and their mama, and also on fire, even the brake lines were all jacked up. So the fact that I could find a kit to replace all this mess with this, which I think we can all agree is much more visually appealing, I mean, absolute home run. To install our fancy new brake line kit, we're going to work from back to front. The finishing line kit has stainless steel hoses that go from each of your rear calipers, then ultimately tee into each other so you can just run one line up to the front. One side note, they do something I wish every company did with the parts they sold. Every little line, every fitting, it's all labeled. With our kit, they included this really nice looking proportioning valve and a pre-bent hard line that's going to let us bolt it right up to our master cylinder. From the factory, brake bias is controlled in our ABS pump, but given that we've jettisoned that, we need to be able to control how much pressure the rear brake sees. The front's getting all of it, but we don't want to lock up the rears when we hit the brakes. It's tucked away, it's kind of out of sight, it looks awesome, but for our case, being that we have a header right next to it, I think it would be much better if we could find a way to mount it on this side of the Brake Master. I know this might not look professional, because it's probably not, but we're going to lay this brake line over a 1/2 inch extension and try to bend it down and 180 it.
Remember, we're already proportioning the rear brakes, so like this is, if anything, this is helping us.
Permanent proportion. Yeah, that is going to work out way better for us. It's much further away from any heat sources. Our clutch reservoir, that's going to mount right about there. So we'll have all this stuff real nice and compact in one area. Now on the front side, we don't need any special proportioning valve. We just connect a hose to each of our brake caliper lines. Those will get teed together and run straight into the front of the brake master cylinder. And I guess you can say that takes us to the finishing line, you know?
Yeah, we'll be stopping in no time.
That is assuming we can get going in the first place, which currently we cannot due to the fact that we don't have a functional clutch. Now, normally it will be as simple as adding a hydraulic line from our slave cylinder that's inside our torque tube and running it up to our clutch master cylinder, bleeding the clutch, and calling it good to go. But in between our slave cylinder and our master cylinder, we're going to install this guy. It's called a Bang Shift Billy, which first and foremost, just phenomenal name for a product. It's a programmable clutch delay valve. It's going to let us dial in exactly how much we want our clutch to slip when we launch it at the drag strip, and it's going to hopefully at least give us a shot at keeping this drivetrain in one piece. We're not going to get too far into the install of this thing right now because frankly we don't need it until we make it to the racetrack, but ultimately we'll be able to get into our Holley Dominator and map clutch slip just like we would boost or fuel. Now this next part we don't technically need to drive the car for the first time, but when a giant box shows up that you've been waiting months for, I mean, you gotta crack it open, right? This is a 6-inch cow hood by VFN, and with any luck, it hopefully will bash into this blow-off valve. Actually fits quite nice up front.
Ooh.
I don't feel a blow-off valve hitting me back. From the driver's perspective, it's really not that bad. It looks like it would be really obstructive.
It's slightly obstructive.
We're worried about looking cool and going fast, not being able to see. Now, when you buy a fiberglass race hood like this, they do tell you that it will need some modification to fit, but I gotta say, up front, it is really nice. All the lines are spot on, but in the back, it hangs over the fender a little bit. It's hitting the windshield. We do need to adjust it here. For that, we need a specialist. The undisputed goat of hacking up a hood and making it look fucking phenomenal, Dalt.
We're just gonna kind of start trimming the areas that are making contact until this thing sits down, flush, nice and level.
Also, another slightly important note, this thing doesn't have hood hinges, which means we're gonna have to pin the hood on. Now, as for where we're gonna mount these pins, that's a good question. In the front, there's not really a good existing place to mount off of. We just have the fiberglass fender tubs, but in the back, we have these metal brackets. There's one on this side, and there's another one over there by the fuel pressure regulator. It's almost like they were made for this exact purpose.
We only have like 1 or 2 kind of high spots here, but it's starting to really level out where we're gonna start taking essentially the same dimension off the entire back, and that'll get us ultimately all the way down. So the only spot that's a little bit interesting on this hood is the overhang on the fender. I like the strength that this 90-degree angle gives us, but the option is either to bend that in and get an ugly, ugly gap, or just cut off the corner.
Cut off the corner, let's do it. Oh, check that out. There we go. Now we're on something. And while Dalt's wrapping up the hood, we are gonna finish up this whole hood pin situation. On the front, we don't have any pre-made brackets to use, but we do have a couple holes in our fender tubs, which these two, that one and that one, they are square with each other. So what we're gonna do is take a little aluminum piece of angle iron, bolt it right about there, and put our hood pin straight into this. There we go. They fought, but we won. Now, I wasn't at all planning on doing this, but being that we had to pull the headlights out to get to the backside of these hood mount brackets, we might as well go ahead and throw in the new headlights, which are black. Oh yeah. Let's see how she looks with the bumper on. Oh, that's money. That is freaking money. Final, or hopefully final, I guess, test fit. All the way around, that's pretty good. There's a very thin gap, kind of how you want it, nice and tight. Now, we need to find out where we need to drill for all our hood pins. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna go around, dab a little bit of grease, real precise on every hood pin, and then when we put the hood down on it, we should have a grease mark, we'll know where to drill. All right, try to go straight up. See mine? Yeah, I got it too. Let's cut this thing up. He didn't screw it up. Ready? Whew.
Wow.
On the frickin' money. So this all worked out great, mainly thanks to Dalt, but we're not quite done yet. If you guys remember, we've got exhaust sticking straight up, aka up pipes, right?
Down pipes.
Up pipes. And we have to make this go out of the hood, and that is by far gonna be the trickiest part of this whole deal.
What we're trying to do is get the exhaust away from critical engine components and to come out of the cowl hood, just the right angle. Maybe put a teardrop on it.
Teardrop will be ideal. Very hard to pull off.
Yes.
I mean, not for a master fabricator such as yourself, right?
That's right.
Can't be that hard.
No, we can make it happen. Pretty good.
Pretty?
Pretty good. Yes, it is pretty.
Really
Thank you.
good.
Really
Let's
good.
be honest. That's really freaking good. So previously, we were kind of trying to build the exhaust to the hood. After some struggles, we'll call it, we decided to go the other way around and build the hood to the exhaust.
That looks so mean like this.
You think we should just leave it like that? Yeah, like the turbo inlet.
Oh my God.
The look on your face, Fernando. You don't look confident.
No, I'm not.
What could possibly go wrong? We got work to do. Just to be clear, if this doesn't turn out well, it's because Tim drew it wrong. This is Tim's drawing.
Time out. If it doesn't turn out well, it's because Dalt wasn't here.
I will say, with this, we do have a little bit of wiggle room because ultimately we're going to do some kind of like stainless steel heat shield around the outside of this. So if we go a little bigger, which we are, so the fiberglass doesn't melt, it's not going to be the end of the world.
Incredible tracing skills.
All right, at the very least, I feel confident that we've cut these big enough that we're not going to have issues with melting the hood. We're going to have to, though, try to angle the exhaust this way because as it sits currently, this part is down below the hood. We can't have that. Plink. start with the easiest option first. Try to add one more pie cut, see if that gets us angle where we need to be. So that doesn't actually look that bad.
Nope.
I don't know. End of the day, it didn't come out that bad. I'm gonna give the part we did prior to the heat shield, what do you think? An honest 6.5 out of 10? 7? All right, 7 out of 10, fair. Holes being a little too big aside, this thing looks fucking fantastic from the front. It looks super tough. I don't know that it comes across on camera like it probably does in person, but I'm digging it. I'm really digging it. And at some point, we are gonna paint match this hood. What I'm about to say might sound odd, but the only thing that's stopping us from driving this first time is getting it running, which I do realize seems like a big deal, but I honestly don't think it's gonna be too bad. What I think is causing our whole no start issue is the fact that we have 93 octane in the tank. But our tune, it's set up for E85, meaning we've been dumping far too much fuel into the engine and probably, in all likelihood, fouled our spark plugs bad. So we're gonna pump every last drop of that garbage 93 out of here and put some corn fuel in it. With, naturally of course, a little help from the sponsor of today's video, the free Upside app. The Upside app gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, and dining. And with over 100,000 gas stations, restaurants, and grocery stores on the Upside app, you know cash back's always around the corner. And guys, this is real cash back. No confusing rewards programs, no points, no credits, just real cash you can transfer right into your bank account. Just claim an offer for whatever you're buying on the Upside app, pay as usual with your credit or debit card, follow the instructions on the app, and get paid. And despite the constant reckless financial decisions that all of you see me make, trying to be mindful of my daily spending on things like food and groceries at least makes me feel like I've heard the term financial responsibility, which I guess is a start, right? Top Upside earners are making as much as $300 a month. To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description and use code ScrapLife to earn an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank of gas. Or you can click the QR code here to claim this offer. We're in neutral. It's very important to remember that you're not supposed to start a car in gear.
Right?
That's right.
So for obvious reasons, we gotta be, a little bit away from the car, but it runs so much better. We haven't even changed the spark plugs, so it's possible they just got bad enough to not run on 93 octane, but on 85, perfect. Well, I'm good now. That's all I needed out of this. No, now this is the first time we've really heat cycled this thing. It ran for what? Call it 2 minutes. Before we only had it running for maybe 15, 20 seconds. I think we can finally put this thing down, put some interior in it, and I guess go drive it. Even though it's like 25 degrees out, so that's not gonna be great, but. Can hear it like I can. I really do.
Sounds sweet.
I love it. Man, it is moments like this make all this hard work worth it. This hasn't been like a particularly complex build so far, but it's been very tedious. The complex part comes next when we try to make all this work. But at least it runs, it drives pretty freaking awesome. You're about to find out, Fernando. What better weather to drive a race car than this, right?
A 1500 horsepower Corvette on this weather.
What could go wrong? I mean, as far as first test drives go, you really can't ask for much more. There's nothing leaking as far as we can tell. No weird sounds, though I'm not sure that we'd hear it anyway. We have learned that our driver door actuator, that's broken, so we got to use the emergency release. But hey, minor details, right, Fernando?
Exactly.
The power steering does not work after it's been sitting. So I'm completely new to this whole electric power steering thing. It works okay. After you're up, you're kind of moving it around a bunch.
Okay.
But from a dead stop, it is not working real well. It feels like it is deadlocked. We might as well not even have power steering. I'm gonna find out if this thing can make it through all this ice. You think these Toyo RR's gonna make it?
Not at all.
I can't believe this. Oh, geez, stop it. I gotta keep moving, don't I? Oh, that's fun. It has no business doing that, but it is fun. As soon as we stop or drive slowly for, I don't know, a couple minutes, it does want to heat up, so I'm pretty certain these fans aren't coming on. Only one fan's on. Shoo! I mean, overall, super freaking successful. We have some kind of residue here on my freshly cleaned windshield. Now, I do suspect that that is probably from this open breather port that we will most certainly be putting a catch can on before we go in the dyno. But the more important issue is the lack of radiator fans. We got to figure that out. Oh man, look at that. That is, it's actually not all oil. It feels kind of fuely as well. There's a little bit of condensation in there, of course mixed with oil. It being this cold, it's just spitting. We're definitely putting a catch can on this. Well, why don't we just do it now?
The clip wasn't clipped all the way on.
That'll do it, huh? Well, at least the fan issue was easy. Now, we just gotta try to make sure it's not spraying oil all over the engine bay. Now, there's been plenty of times when I've been building cars and I've ran the valve covers just like this for quite a long time and open breather on them without really much of an issue. It certainly hasn't done this. But the problem we're running into on this particular build, we were fairly limited as to where we could put that AN breather fitting. We didn't want to do it up here where the headers come out. We had to go in the back, and on the bottom side of this valve cover, there is no baffle back there. So there is nothing stopping that pressurized air, oil, ethanol, and whatever else wants to fly out of that hole from doing exactly that. Luckily though, it's a super easy fix. We run 2 lines from the valve covers to the 2 ports on the top of this catch can. On pretty much every build I've done, I've ran one of these big improved racing cans, but on this build in particular, there is not room for it. We are really hard up for vertical room in this engine bay. We pretty much would have to go right here or somewhere over there, but we put our coil packs there, so that's not gonna work. And while it could fit right here, once we put the fittings on top, there's not a freaking chance. So we had to sub the big boy out for the small boy. Even with the fittings installed, the smaller can's basically the same exact height as the larger can is on its own, so it's clearly the winner for this build, and we'll put the catch can she told you not to worry about on the shelf for something else. The idea here is that even though this catch can's ultimately vented to the atmosphere, just like our valve covers were, now all that air and oil and whatever else has to travel through these lines and through the crazy baffling that they have inside of these catch cans, meaning only air should ever make it to the atmosphere. We're all situated, everything's mounted below the fender line, so our hood should have no problem clearing, and our hose route, and even that looks visually appealing. Now the last thing we have to do here is change the spark plugs, and to be clear, these were the same plugs that were in the car when it burned down. I don't know how many miles are on them. They are a good bit rich. Needless to say, they were not gonna cut it on the dyno. We're gonna gap our new plugs, nice tight 17 thousandths. Money, there we go.
Do you know what you're doing?
What do you think?
That you don't.
No, no. We're gonna figure this out. We need to make sure this thing does not move on the dyno, and more importantly, with these tires on here, they're rock hard, being it's so cold out, I think traction is gonna be a problem. What we've done here is weld some shackles to the dyno itself, way down low, so now we can put straight down pressure from the car. Oh yeah, look at the car sinking right down. That's traction there. Not bad for a not working car, right?
Just for clarity here, are we certain that wastegate routing is correct, and does he have some control? It's
Yes,
just, okay,
yes, because as soon as he put 5% in, he said that it reacted the way it should have, but
Okay.
it's not flowing.
Yeah.
So before we just go and assume that we need bigger wastegates, we're gonna try one thing just to make sure that the fact that we're recirculating these wastegates into the downpipe isn't causing our issue. We're gonna flip our wastegates 180 degrees around, let them just dump right out the top, and see if that changes anything. So be honest, the hardest part about building this turbo kit was the recirc and getting those angles and shit, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
By
So,
far.
if this ends up being what's wrong, that's going to be a kick to the groin for sure.
There we go.
Same thing, not quite as bad. It made 1,111 horsepower.
The only reason he's stopping is because I called the insurance company and we don't have coverage on the roof of this building when he puts a piston through it.
This lower line here, that's our boost graph. There was a spike and then a dip, which you could feel in the car and probably hear in the dyno video. But then once we got up in the RPMs, it literally just started running away. And the ultimate result of that, if we left it unchecked, is probably scattering this motor.
I think it's a really good opportunity to make some awesome improvements, though.
It is. This is the first time that we've designed and you've built a turbo kit. So we're just winging it, basically, seeing what happened. And we are going to put bigger gates on it, I guess 60 millimeter waste gates. And we're going to just axe the whole recirculation thing. It was a really cool idea, but at this point, it's looking like it's not worth it. If it was a hindrance here, it could still be a hindrance even if we do bigger gates. The positive to ditching the whole recirc thing, though, is it's going to make changing to a bigger waste gate far easier. We just hack these off, drill a larger hole, and add a wastegate on. We'll dump them out the hood. What would have really got complex is if we had to modify the entire recirculation tube for that bigger wastegate. It had to get offset this way. It actually had to been completely remade because it'd be bigger diameter too. Just not a good time, right?
That would be miserable.
Miserable indeed. So recirc was cool for the 3 dyno passes it lasted. So while this didn't technically go how we planned it, there's still a lot to be happy about today. Number one, we just got the shop dyno record back from Alex and his stupid Mustang. Go ahead and 1111.
Made like 80 more horsepower than a 5.0 stock motor Coyote with 64s, and you got a 427 with G40-1050s. Made 1111.
I found his notepad. He's been preparing this whole speech for weeks. It's written down on his desk right now. See, here's the thing. That thing was a finished product. They were going after it all day. We're just getting started, baby. We didn't even hit red line, all right? See, we're done with this. We're done. Forget about it. We're not worried about second place, you know? Number two, and if we're being real, this is probably the more important part. This is now the highest horsepower car I've ever built. And again, we're just getting started. 6,500 RPMs. There's 14 degrees of timing in it. We've got so far to go. I wouldn't be surprised if, as it sits, it makes 1,300 horsepower. That 1,500 is still going to be a challenge, but for now, I couldn't be happier. I'm going to hold off the dyno, get back to work.
So it's close.
What are you doing? You missed the shot. How many days off the Celsius?
Nothing that he said he was going to accomplish on the dyno today actually happened.
Just remember, guys, he's not on the wall.